Many of you will be familiar with the experiments done that started already in the 1700s and the Chladni plates and sound that vibrates on a metal plate, sand that vibrates on a metal plate, and the sound comes from beneath and creates these beautiful patterns. So what this does is show us the physical evidence how this invisible thing called sound can manifest into physical form. Now remember, there are some people, some ignorant and arrogant people that make silly statements, or should I say stupid statements, and say if I can't touch it and I can't feel it, then it doesn't exist. You know, give me proof. It's got to be solid proof. I want to feel it, I want to touch it, I want to taste it, then I can believe it. Well, you know, you can't see the sound waves leaving my mouth to your ears. You can't see them. And yet, when I talk to you, you understand. So clearly, I'm either doing magic here or there's something else going on here.
He claims every sound frequency creates a unique shape.
Sand on a metal plate, sound frequencies to the metal plate. Every sound frequency has its very own special shape. Every frequency is referred to as a prime resonance frequency. Everything in existence resonates at a specific frequency. From the tiniest atom, virus, molecule, everything has its own prime resonance frequency. It's interesting that this prime resonance frequency was most likely referred to in Star Trek as the prime directive, and that you cannot breach the prime directive. Now, let me explain to you what I believe this actually means. If everything comes out of the prime resonance frequency of creation, from the word or the sound of God, the Creator, everything comes forth from that one burst of creation, this resonance of creation, and it keeps coming forth out of this resonance, coherent, harmonic resonance of creation. That means that if you breach that, you're going against creation. You're in dissonance. You're in disharmony. You're in dis-ease with creation. You're breaching the prime resonance frequency, or you're breaching the prime directive. And this is why Star Trek was telling us for more than 5 decades now that you cannot breach the prime directive. What's the consequence of breaching the prime directive is that you actually start to destroy yourself because you're in dissonance with the resonant frequency, the coherent, resonant, prime resonant frequency. So hopefully that starts making sense how important the sound and the creation story really is. So every sound frequency has its own specific shape, and in this little example, it shows us that the lower the frequency, the simpler the shapes, the higher the frequency, the more complex the shapes. This is one of the simplest, most beautiful examples to show people how sound manifests into physical form. This is the key word here, people. Sound manifests in physical form. This invisible, untouchable thing that leaves my mouth manifests in physical form. Now, while you're watching this little experiment that I've seen 100 times and I cannot get enough of it, because it's like watching magic appear in front of your eyes. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We are manifesting physical form. Now imagine this is sand on a metal plate, a very simple sound. Can you imagine the complexity of the sound that we make with our voices as we speak? How much we're actually manifesting, how much physical form and shape we are manifesting as we speak.
Sand on a metal plate reveals how sound manifests physically.
So that's sand on a metal plate showing us how sound manifests into physical form and physical shapes. And just because you can't hear the frequency doesn't mean it's not going to change the sand. The higher the frequency, the more complex the shapes, and it doesn't stop. It gets more and more complex as the sound and the frequency goes up. Now, this takes us to a brilliant discovery by a man called Erik Larson, who created or discovered what's known as the cymoscope, that can actually show us the physical form and the shape of the sound that we make with our voices, and the infinite number of shapes of our voices. But before we look at this incredible example in this video, I'd like to remind you that what you saw on the metal plate was a two-dimensional representation creation of a three-dimensional effect. So imagine that those shapes that you see on that metal plate actually go out in all directions. And remember that sound, when I make a sound with my mouth, it doesn't travel in a straight line. It doesn't go from my mouth to your ears. It goes in all directions. So it's like a bubble that's growing and going in all directions. Now, see it as that, right? This bubble that grows and goes everywhere. Now, when you sing into a microphone and it's connected to the cymoscope, you actually see a two-dimensional perspective of a three-dimensional event that is captured in water in this beautiful experiment done by Eric Larson. So imagine the human voice as a tool of creation. And we'll be talking about the tool of creation and our ability to manifest with our sound and the words that we speak and the thoughts that we have. And this brings us to a deeper understanding of who we are as spiritual beings, conscious beings connected to a physical body, and our abilities that are way beyond our current understanding. And this gets into much deeper spiritual levels of understanding our place on this earth, the fact that we are divine beings of infinite potential and that we are co-creators of our reality. After all, even more than 100 years ago, quantum physics has clearly shown us that we are the makers of our own reality, the creators of our own reality. And this beautiful example with a cymoscope showing the power and the infinite creation that we can create with our voice is a beautiful example of this potential in the human body.